lovely starshine lights my way to bed. Magic
We're now on to
rainbows
my favourite
glisten
bit of the
in my
blouse,
hair.
the bow. I really do think that this is what makes this blouse really special, and I think what I'm going to even do, because the bow is removable, I'm perhaps going to make one in grey or in black, or even both, so I can make this multi-changeable as well. Pretty simple to do this. What I will say is the pattern instructions told you to add interfacing to one of the pieces of fabric for the bow. I didn't do that because I'm using Tarn-Lawn, which although it drapes beautifully, it is quite crisp, so I didn't think that there was the need to add any interfacing. So it's entirely up to you. If you want a softer bow, don't add the interfacing. If you want it quite stiff, then make sure you add that, because I haven't. So I'll see you soon. Okay, so now I'm going to get the bow pinned together, ready for sewing. Now the pattern did tell you to place the bow on a folded edge of fabric, so you'd have one continuous long piece of fabric per side. However, I didn't have enough fabric left because I only had 2 meters of fabric and not 2.2 that it says that you need. So all that I did is cut 4 smaller pieces, and then I've stitched 2 together with a centre seam allowance there. So what I'm going to do is get these pinned together. You want to make sure first of all that you've got the fabrics with the right ends together, so just check on the points and make sure they match up, which they do. So I'm going to start in the centre point. So what I've got is one of the fabric pieces with the right side of the fabric facing up, and I've got that centre seam allowance there. I'm going to place the other one with the right side of the fabric facing down, matching up the seam allowances. I'm going to put a couple of pins in. Now what I will be doing is leaving a gap there of 2 to 3 inches, because I'll use that to turn the bow right side out once I've stitched it. Now it does also say on the pattern to interface one of the bow pieces, but I've chosen not to do that. 1, because I didn't have enough interfacing left in my stash. 2, I'm using Liberty of London Tarn-Lawn, which although it does drape really well, it is quite crisp as well, so I don't think it needs interfacing.
Heavy shackles used to hold me down. Now my feet don't even reach the ground. Just like a prisoner when his sentence ends, all my dreams are coming true. And I owe this happiness to you. Love has changed my former point of view. Just like a butterfly, I've got new wings. All my dreams are coming. All my dreams are.
I'm going to head over to the sewing machine and I'm going to sew that at a 1 centimetre seam allowance, but remembering to leave that gap in the middle. So many times I've forgot to leave the gap and come to turn it right side out and you can't. So I'll head over to the machine. Okay, so I'm going to get the bow stitched. So I'm starting where the pin is, at the right hand side of the gap that I've left. So there's the centre, here's the pin. So I'm going to start sewing there. As I said before, it's a 1 centimetre seam allowance.
Heavy shackles used to hold me down. Now my feet don't even reach the ground. Just just like a prisoner when his sentence ends. All my dreams are coming true, and I owe this happiness to you. Love has changed my former point of view.
Okay, so I'm approaching the centre point again now, so I need to remember to leave the gap, so I need to stop where this other pin is. And do a back stitch, and there we go. So that's stitched all the way along. What I'm going to do is trim that seam allowance to half its width all the way along, but I'm not going to trim the area where I've left the gap, because I will need to be folding the seam allowance in on that once I've turned it the right side out, which I'll show you just over back at the table. So I'm just going to trim the seam allowance to half its width all the way around, and also snip off the corners just to make that more pointy when I turn it right side out. So let's go back over to the table. Okay, so I'm going to trim the seam allowance. I have put 2 pins in where the gap is, just to remind me not to trim those as I'm in the flow. So I'm going to start by snipping off this corner and then trim along there. Okay, so I've got to where my first pin is. I'm just going to snip along there and then snip that way, so that it leaves that bit of the seam allowance bigger, and then do the same there.
And I owe this happiness to you. Love has changed my former point of view. Just like a butterfly, I've got new wings. All my dreams are coming, all my dreams are humming, all my dreams are coming true.
Okay, that's all trimmed, so I'm going to remove the pins now and turn it right side out. Just get rid of these threads.
To you, love has changed my former point of view. Just like a butterfly, I've got new wings. All my dreams are coming, all my dreams are humming, all my dreams are coming true.
Okay, so now I'm going to use my bodkin just to push out those corners. So I'm going to find that centre gap, which is there. And get right into the points. And then I'm going to do the same on the other side. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to press this, and what you need to do is make sure the seams are nice and flat. So I just roll them a little bit as I go and press them, roll and press. When you get to the centre gap that's left open, you just want to ensure that the seam allowance is folded in on the top and the bottom, and press over it, because that will then keep those seam allowances pressed in on the inside. And then what we'll do is we'll top stitch all the way around the bow, and that will close that gap as you're top stitching as well. So I'm going to go and get this ironed, and then I will come back and show you how to do the top stitch. Okay, so I'm just top stitching the bow, just to make sure that gap is closed that are left in the centre, but also just to give it a nice neat finish. I've already done so far round, so I'll just show you this last little bit. So I am lining up the edge of the bow with that bit of my sewing foot, just to make sure that I keep a straight line.
All my dreams are coming, all my dreams are humming, all my dreams are coming true.
That's all done, so that's top stitched all the way around. That is my bow complete. So final step on this blouse is to add the little loop to secure the bow in place on the back of the blouse. I should have actually done that whilst I was sewing the collar stand on, but I was that engrossed in sewing the collar I totally forgot. But I'm just going to add a little bit of elastic anyway instead, which will be fine because it's going to be covered up by the collar anyway, so I'm not too fussed about that. So I'll head back over to the table and show you how I do that, and then the final thing is sewing the buttons or snaps that I'm using in my case. Okay, so I'm just going to do the little bit that I forgot, which is the little tab to hold the bow in place at the back of the collar. I would recommend referring to the pattern instructions, because it will be much neater if you do it the way that you're supposed to do, because you enclose it inside this collar stand. But I can't be bothered with unpicking everything, so I am just going to make do with a little bit of elastic. So all I've got is a little piece of elastic. Let's just see if I can focus in on that for you. A little piece of elastic that I'm just going to fold over on the two ends. I've put a pin in the centre point of the back, so I've measured for the centre point and put a pin there just so as I know where it is. And then I am going to place it there, stick a pin in, so all I'm going to do is do a line of stitching there, and then I will fold it under on the other side and just do a line of stitching there. And then what I'll do is pass the bow through there, so when you're using the bow it just keeps it in place. So I'm just going to head back to the sewing machine to do that, and then I will show you the last step, which is adding the closures.